welcome back to the Red Eye Garage. Another chair chat video, except I'm not going to be talking too much this time. I don't do a lot of product review videos on here. I try not to because I don't want it to feel like I'm just trying to sell stuff to you all the time. But you guys are doing similar things in your shop, and we need tools. So if I get a new tool, I'm going to try it out and tell you what I think. And if I can save you money on it or pass on any info, I will. So today we're going to talk about fabrication and cutting. If you follow me for any length of time, you know this is my weapon of choice. I hate these things, but I also love them because I use the cutoff wheel for almost all my fabrication. I have a plasma cutter. I never really liked it, not because the machine was bad, I found it faster to just use cutoff wheel and less cleanup time. So I don't know, I don't have a lot of experience with plasma, but I'm not giving up on it yet. So a company called Bestarc reached out to me and asked if I wanted to try this, and before I say yes, I always look them up on Amazon. I read all the reviews, and they were really, I mean, there were like 17,000 reviews on this model, and they were all really positive. So I also look at the price because I hate watching videos when stuff's like completely unobtainable. You know, we're all working on a budget, some smaller than others, so saving money is huge, and this thing is really affordable. So the link will be in the description, and so you can check it out yourself, read the reviews, watch this video. As with any review video, I'm going to show you how it works now, what it looks like, but I'm not really going to have an opinion until I use it for, you know, several jobs and see how it holds up. So we're going to do an unboxing video today, and then we'll use it a little bit and just show you, and then we'll go from there. I'll let you make your own judgment on it. The box is pretty small and light. Most of these new plasma cutters are pretty compact. But let's see how the Bestarc stacks up. This model is the BTC500DP, whatever that means. We'll go over the specs once I open it up as far as, like, you know, what it can cut. It is one of the multi-voltage units, so if you have 110 or 220, which I think they almost all are like that now. I will say from my prior experience with plasma cutters, unless you're just doing really light duty, very short duty cycle stuff, you're gonna want 220 to run these. I'm not saying it won't do it, but I was tripping breakers constantly, just cutting like 1/8 inch stuff. So unless you're doing sheet metal work, I would recommend having 220 available. Alright, well, it's a pretty color. So there it is. Little digital display. I think most of them are all pretty standard. It was packaged nicely. It's got a water separator on the back, the air in, on and off. Looks pretty standard. Let's see what else comes in the box. Alright, so here's kind of the standard 220 to 110 adapter. So it is handy sometimes if you gotta like go out, you know, around the back side of your building to cut something and you just have an extension cord. It is good to have, but like I said, 220 will be your friend. So there's an air line, ground cable, looks like some consumables, and the torch lead. I think these are all pretty standard. I'll have to compare it to my other one. I do notice this difference right out of the box, and I'm excited to see that because I think that's a lot of my problem. I'm not super skilled with the torch, and I touch the material too much, and I really think that's hard on these tips. So that my other one does not have this little stand. So some of you experts out there probably know more about it than I do, but so I'm excited to see that and give that a shot. If you're running 110, looks like you can go up, it says up to 40 amps. and up to 5/16 steel with 50 to 65 psi of air. On 220, 50 amp, it says you can go up to 3/8 or 12 millimeter and 60 to 70 psi. The duty cycle at 78 degrees on 220 and 110, it says 60%, which I think that's pretty good for the cost of this machine. For, you know, I would consider this a hobby machine. You're not doing professional like all day cutting with it, but a lot of us are kind of in between, more than the average hobbyist, but definitely not like what a fab shop would be doing. So don't, you know, or like know your machine, check the duty cycles. So that's pretty good. Pretty basic. I'm going to hook it all up. I'm going to hook it all up and we'll get set up and cut something. I also noticed it does have a chart right on the top of the machine that has the amperages and pressures for different thicknesses, just like your welder kind of has quick settings. So it looks like just a standard air connector. It already has the quick connect on it. Cool. All right, stay tuned. All right, so this it's pretty cut and dry because there's only one of each specific thing. That's just where your airline hooks up. This says pilot arc. So, little washer here. Just put that eyelet over there. Whoops. Do you ever have a day where you're just all thumbs? You shouldn't need tools for any of this. It just kind of threads in there. And then here's, I think this is for the trigger control. This just has a little kind of a keyway and a groove. So it can only go on one way. Just spin this on, just needs to be finger tight. Then the ground cable is just a standard lead. You just push it in and give it a little spin like that. And that's it. Now you just need to hook it up to the power and let it rip. It comes with your tip already installed, and it comes with extras. It looks like extra hose clamps. Not sure what the Teflon tape is for. I suppose if the fitting on the back were to leak, that's just like for the airline. And then it does come with a little universal tool for changing the tips and stuff. I'm all set up here, my little temporary workstation. This is just a test video. In future videos on the Jeep, I will use this for actual jobs, but I just want to lay this out and cut some things. So we've got some sheet metal, some 1/8 inch, some 1/4 inch, and then a big bolt. I think that's 5/8 bolt. I rarely work with metal over 1/4 inch thick, so like most of the frames and brackets and mounts and stuff, it's either 1/4 inch or less. And I have a feeling you guys are probably the same way. Occasionally I'll cut like through an axle tube or something that's maybe 1/2 inch, or but it's not something I regularly work with. So I'm going to try cutting all of these on 110, and then we'll bump it up to 220 and see if we pop any breakers or what happens. Hey, I just noticed the torch has a little ball on it. That's pretty nifty. So let's fire it up and look at the display and see how it goes. I guess we better connect the air supply. Well, it didn't explode. That's good. Here's the 110 adapter. So it'd be best to plug this right in the wall, but if you're like me, I'm trying to keep it real. Just an extension cord. It's a 25 footer. It's a nice heavy extension cord, but that's probably not recommended, but that's real. Just a regular switch on the back. It's starting up. Let's see what it says. Well, that's fancy. Alright, first impression looks pretty cool. So it's showing me my voltage, so it knows we're running on 110. This is our amperage selector, so it looks like 15 amp is the lowest. And then, so air pressure, it's reading 79. Okay, so it looks like we can adjust our regulator here. We'll go to 65. I don't have any regulator on my compressor. I'm hooked right to it, so and then okay, so that turns on the air, and with the regulator we probably will have to adjust it. Okay, let me think. Yeah, so that'll let me adjust it and get it more accurate. 65. So you just pull that out and adjust it. 2T and 4T. Alright, I had to look in the book at what 2T and 4T means. My welder has the same setting and I never use it. So the 2T says press switch, torch working, stop pressing switch, torch stops working. So that means it's just like a intermittent switch. And then 4T means you click it once, it's running, you can let go of the switch, it'll keep running, then you click it again and it'll stop running. So that'd be probably like if you're doing a long cut and you don't want to hold the trigger in the whole time. And then this one over here on the right, post time, so it adjusts, there we go, in seconds, how much the set number of seconds after you release the trigger that the airflow continues. And then pilot arc time, so it's the same thing. When it's selected here, you can adjust it with that. So I'm going to leave it right where it's at from the factory, and we'll see how it goes. So air is prepped, we're on 2T, and we left this where it was. Now I'm going to look at the little chart. We'll start with the sheet metal on 110 and work our way up. I'm going to put my hood on the lighter setting. I usually don't like it quite as dark when I'm cutting. One tip is keep your lead up off the ground right under where you're working, or you'll get hot stuff that'll come down and melt a hole in your airline. Ask me how I know. Alright, so we got our ground hooked up. I'm just going to I'll do a straight cut, and then I'll maybe do a circle and see how this setup works. It says, so that's like a 5-second cut. It says the fan on this won't run unless it's hot, which is kind of nice, because my other one, as long as it's running, it's making a ton of noise. Alright, let's try it. Cool. I'm on 20 amps. This is 18 gauge sheet metal. I am going to turn down. I don't like that, how long that post flow is. Just personal preference. Alright, now I'm gonna, so that was just a straight cut. It looks pretty clean. I'll leave that so you can look at it. This metal is dirty. I'm gonna cut in and do a circle. Alright, so 20 amps, my air compressor kicked on and it killed everything. So let me put that back on. Sorry about that. So in my shop with my setup, 110 just doesn't work because the air compressor, these things suck a lot of air. So you need a good compressor and it's gonna run. I mean, I cut like 5 inches at the most and that kicked on, and then this running at 20 amps and the air compressor kicking on was too much. So that's why it's interesting, because I can weld, you know, at 120 amps, probably 110 amps all day on 110 with my Eastwood MIG, and it's fine. But the plasma is hard on the breakers. So and that could be the extension cord, or you know, my compressor. I don't know what circuit they're on. It must be on the same circuit, and it's probably a 15 amp breaker. So duh, I know I'm not an electrician, but just trying to be practical out here in the shop. So I'm going to abort the 110 test, and I'm just telling you, personal experience, You know, MIG welding, you can get by on 110. I built my whole truck bed on 110. I've since moved up to 220, running the welder all the time. And but if you want to cut plasma, you need either separate breakers for your air compressor and cutter, or just go right for 220. I can at least show you the cut I did. So this was my straight cut. I'm not very good with plasma, so this is the machine's fault that it's looks like Stevie Wonder cut this. And then there's my part of a circle. I was coming in here and going to cut a circle. Pretty clean cut, other than me being shaky. So I'm going to turn the machine off and switch over to 220. Let's try this again. Hooked up to 220. Let's fire this bad boy up. Alright, so now the indicator says 220. I'm leaving everything else the same, 20 amps. Just cutting the sheet metal. I'll finish my circle and then we'll bump it up and go to a thicker metal. We're moving up to an 1/8 inch thick and just see what it does. So that cut the 1/8 inch, no problem on 20 amps. So I would say I need to go down in amperage on this sheet metal. So let's go all the way down to 15 on the sheet metal and see how it cuts. That's better. So the cut looks cleaner. I could move pretty fast and my breaker probably wouldn't pop. So if you're cutting sheet metal, 110 or 220, 18 gauge, 15 amps, turn it all the way down. I'm going to turn this up to 25 amps, keeping the air pressure, everything else the same. And I'm going to just do a straight cut on this piece of 1/4 inch. Come a little closer. And this is probably the most common thing I do when I'm building stuff, is like 1.5 inch wide, 1/4 inch flat stock. I use this for brackets, braces, and shackles, and so I cut a lot of 1/4 inch. So let's see how it does. Looks good. 25 amps seemed to be no problem. That blurb at the beginning was the little guard got caught, and that was me. But once it started cutting, I'm not going to pick up the other end because it's hot, but pretty smooth, clean cut. So that was no problem. Now let's crank it up and we'll try the 5/8 bolt. I know it's a perfectly good 5/8 bolt, but This is for science. Let's crank it up to 35 amps. Let's see. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just guessing. I'm just gonna try to cut it straight off. Well, that was a piece of cake. I had to go a little slower, and it's not super pretty. But if you had to part off something big, like a shaft or something, it cut through it no problem. So I'm having fun. Let's try this. I don't ever work with, I machine 1/2" steel, but I never would really fabricate anything with it. But I have this little piece of 1/2" by 2" bar stock. Let's cut it in half. It's rusty, so that'll be kind of an interesting component to this. So I'm gonna crank it up to 40 amps and try cutting this 1/2" steel. There's 40, air pressure, everything else is the same. Tip still looks pretty good. Rusty 1/2" steel. I went a little too fast. It cut through everything but the very last little bit. So, cool. I think that was user error. I went too fast. And the little tiny bit at the end, it would have broke off with a hammer. Let's try it again. I'm gonna crank it right up to 50 and cut that same speed. Full blast, 1/2" plate, 50 amps. That was better.